Good evening. You are live this wonderful evening on the Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team, Justina Winfrey, John Carter, and William Moore, attorneys William Moore and John Carter. And we have a very special guest this evening, attorney Stephanie Franklin from Baltimore. Thank you so much, Attorney Franklin, for joining us. How are you this lovely evening?
I am well, Justina. Thank you so much and the Justice team for having me tonight. I'm really excited about this show. And so I want to personally thank you for inviting me on.
It is my pleasure to have you on. It's a blessing to have you on. I know that you are a wave maker. You are making some moves out there in Baltimore and nationally and even abroad. The one thing that really excited me was to find out that your firm received the PPP funding. So, of course, you've seen the stories and you've heard the stories of people who haven't received the money, businesses, particularly Black-owned businesses that should qualify and that do qualify for PPP, but have ran into red tape. So it's a blessing to hear of the businesses that have ultimately been funded, like yours. And soon we'll have Dr. Okoye on the line from the Nebraska Institute for Forensic Sciences. His organization was also funded. So yes, just wondering what was your process like?
So, as you may or may not, Justina, know, I've been in business for 13 and a half years in my law firm. And I have a second business as well that's been in existence for about 2 years. So in applying for the PPP loan, I applied through my firm, the Franklin Law Group. And so I was fortunate and blessed, really, in the sense that I had been receiving repetitive emails from one of my business banking institutions, which is a large bank, M&T Bank, and also from, believe it or not, my healthcare broker for my firm. They were sending me information prior to, and my accountant firm, excuse me. Information was being sent prior to the application being rolled out. So I started seeing what documents and things that I needed. And fortunately, I was able to obtain those documents. And so what really pushed me was literally the night before the PPP loan application was released, my father said, "Steffi, you need to apply for this loan, get your things in order, and send it out." And so, after having Sunday dinner with my family, I came home, I gathered those documents because I had a sense of what they were because of those three places I told you about that had been emailing me over the course of a couple of weeks, right? M&T Bank, my accounting firm, as well as my healthcare broker. So I had a sense of what they were looking for. So the night before, literally, Justina, I started pulling together all of those documents. So the very next day, which was April 6th, when it was released, the email came from my bank. M&T Bank, and they said the application is open. So I had a lot of documents that I had pulled together the night before, and I was able to get it in expeditiously.
And this was the first round?
This was the first round. So yeah, let me be more clear. So I was really fortunate and blessed, I'm going to say really blessed, to receive the PPP loan the first round. So I was one of those businesses, and I was told that I was approved within 2 weeks of me submitting the application. I do want to say that I did submit the application the very first day. I made that a priority, and within 2 weeks, I did receive the monies.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so awesome. It's that's really good to hear because we've heard we've heard of a few who have followed all of the steps, and it sounds like you've had a more favorable experience. And I'm wondering if it's because you had a prior relationship with your financial institution. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that makes a difference. What we found is that because the processes were not streamlined and straight across the board, banks were ultimately making their own decisions. And we can't necessarily blame the banks if SBA doesn't have oversight, right?
Mhm.
So, one of the things that we started with Bruce Carter was the Coalition for Small Businesses. And we began to gather the data and survey how many small businesses in disadvantaged, blighted, and urban communities were being affected and impacted in a negative way by not being able to operate and receive the funding from the SBA. Well, the banks came back and said the SBA, they're not giving the guarantees fast enough. Or you're approved and everything is in order and you're in the queue, but we are concerned that SBA will ultimately renege on the guarantee that they've given us.
Hmm.
And at any point, what we found was that the SBA could in fact renege on a guarantee if an I wasn't crossed or a T wasn't dotted, a I wasn't dotted, T wasn't crossed. So the banks have been holding approved loans.
Hmm.
They've been holding approved loans for months until they receive a guarantee from the SBA with no where there won't be any red flags at all should that business, go under at any point. And the bank ultimately they want their money back. To my understanding, each bank receives something like $5,000 per application that they process.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's not that they don't want to give the money, they just want to make sure the SBA will guarantee the loan. And it seems like many Black-owned businesses have been impacted as a result, depending on which financial institution they go to.
Yeah. Okay. So, can I comment on that a little
Yes.
bit? So, I've heard similar things. One of the things I will say in my experience when I was receiving this information from those three kind of sources of information is they reiterated the importance of having all of your documents in order, so that there will not be a chance that you are rejected. Okay. Um, and that was even highly underscored in the application process when you were filling out the application for the SBA. What I will say is this. I think there are a couple of things at play here, and I think that we need to look at historically how lending has occurred in Black communities, and I want to be very specific when I say Black communities because I think that the experience could also be different based on your lineage, right?
Mhm.
So there are historic factors that those of us who are descendants of captive Africans enslaved in the US, or who people may have heard as DAS, descendants of Africans enslaved in the US, or even ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery.
That's right.
And so what happens is historically, and those are generally people that have, and it's defined differently based on whether you are calling yourself DCOS, DAS, or ADOS.
Mhm.
But one to two parents, grandparents, great grandparents, so on and so forth, who were born in this country before 1965. And given that historic basis, we understand coming through enslavement, Jim Crow, the Black Codes, all of the redlining. We know that we as a community had been shut out of lending and that we have also been victims of predatory lending.
Mhm.
And so when I was watching, I did feel again that I was particularly blessed and fortunate to receive the loan. But what I was watching is I wanted to know exactly what was occurring as to why certain businesses were not receiving loans. Now, there are some of my friends who are business owners. One of them in particular owns a law firm, and she banks with a large bank, that bank being PNC Bank. And she got her information in as well. And she did receive the PPP loan, but she received it the second round. And I don't know if at that point the money was exhausted, um, or it just seemed unclear from the beginning. I want to say to you, it seemed very unclear from the beginning what the rules were, and they seemed to be different depending on which bank you engaged with. And I say that in the sense that there were people who actually applied, and I had been reading about it on the very first day as well with other institutions, and they were denied. And so some of it I was understanding in my reading is that there were different institutions that handled it better. I just happened to be with a bank, banking with a business banking, account. That particular bank tended to handle it well and received high praise. Others did not. In terms of the confirmation, like from the SBA, like all T's crossed, all I's dotted. I want to speak a little bit to that if I can.
Please.
So one of the things that I have noticed, and I think it's twofold, we have this, historical exclusion from receiving economic, right, enrichment. Let me say that. Right. We haven't been able to get the loans. We're turned down. There are bigger hoops to jump through, higher interest rates, so on and so forth. But the other part of that is some of us, and many of us, I would say, the majority probably are first generation business owners. And some of what happens there is that there are certain records that we may not know to keep. Mm-hmm. Right. So again, as I indicated, I've been in business in my law firm for 13 and a half years. I do have employees who are W-2 employees that I pay payroll taxes on. And one of the things that I was learning going through this process is I was able to get my hands on certain things very easily. Right. So some of the things that they asked for in the application, depending on the period, whether it was in 2019 or early 2020, they want to know what your wage end year reports were. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know what they were. I could get my hands on that really easily. Right. I could pull a report down and there it was. They wanted to know about your payment of taxes for your federal unemployment taxes, your state unemployment taxes. I was able to do that quickly because I have access to reports because those things were set up. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know what your other expenses are, whether or not they were office rent or office mortgage, utilities, which included, your gas and electric, your telephones, your internet service, all of those things, and your health insurance. Like, I provide health insurance for my employees. I was able to grab that information pretty quickly. And so what I have found in speaking with some people is that there have been some challenges around being able to obtain that information pretty quickly, right? So I don't know if people had a number of 1099s that worked for them. I don't know if people were submitting their tax returns. Some of that was, a challenge for people. Also, I want to say that I don't think, particularly that first round, that the rules were very clear about how to apply and what was needed. And I can see that people who may be business owners, who may be a solo business owner, for example, and it may just be them. And so they don't keep all of this information. Some of that information that they were requesting, like Form 940, Form 941, some people really don't know what that is, right? So I think it's severalfold is what I'm saying.
And I'm glad you brought up the point of the forms, because the one thing that we found was that, again, some banks required certain information, other banks required different information. We had a colleague, Bruce Carter, who read the 880-page CARES Act, and he's not an attorney, but he applied for that loan, okay, for the PPP. And he applied to repurpose his loan, all right, which you can according to the bill. Mm-hmm. The problem is the banks It's not that the banks didn't read the 880-page document. Ultimately, they went based off of whatever guidance SBA gave. And I said early on, it sounded like, and I make the comparison, the HAMP modification program from the previous administration for foreclosures. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that process was extremely loose, and too many financial institutions had the power to make certain decisions and did not require streamlined documents. So certain financial institutions with PPP for this particular round required, they would allow you to utilize your bank statements. Okay. Mm-hmm. They didn't require the 940 form. They didn't require you to have the W-2. They simply wanted the 1040 Schedule C. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. The problem would come when all banks, so case in point, I want to say that, and I want to read these off real quick, and it'll take about 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. This particular financial institution, they required for, all right. So for businesses that did not have employees, they simply wanted you to, if you didn't have a W-2, okay, and you were a sole proprietor. So if your business was a corporation, professional corporation, general partnership, LLC, or nonprofit, they simply wanted your ID, and the documents that they required would be IRS 941 form. And it gave you specific dates that they required you to have these forms for those particular quarters of 2019, okay? Or the IRS 940 form, or payroll reports, a summary report over a 12-month period for your employees. Some banks would not allow you to give a summary of payroll reports, because keep in mind, for small businesses that don't pay ADP, who are keeping and managing their own books, they in turn might be paying cash and documenting it via invoice. They may be utilizing PayPal. They may be using Cash App, Zelle, all of the different online and app platforms in order to pay their invoices and to pay their employees. So the good thing that we found was that a few financial institutions would in fact take they would allow you to prove your payroll via invoices or bank statements or financial transactions through your phone or online digital transactions. Other banks wouldn't allow that. We've heard of situations where banks said that people were not qualified because of their character.
Well, this wasn't supposed to be.
And credit. Exactly. Credit has nothing to do
for the loan.
Yes. So that's why we've been documenting these mishaps, because again, clearly, like you said, it has nothing to do with your business qualifying for the loan. As long as you have employees, if you are, filing for your employees, permitted that they're not independent contractors and can't qualify on their own, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yes, that was a problem regarding the forms. Dr. Okoye just tuned in, and he received the funding for the Nebraska School of Forensic Science in Nebraska. Dr. Okoye.
Yes.
Hi, sir. How are you?
Fine. Can I speak in about 5 minutes?
Yes, sir. I can go ahead and mute you one more time. No problem. Let me know when you're ready.
10 minutes would be really better.
Okay. I know you're working right now, sir, on a couple of autopsies. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Okoye has been gracious enough to carve out some time for us. He's on a couple of work projects right now. So, Attorney Franklin, what would you recommend at this point for And of course, this show does not give legal advice. If you need legal advice, please consult a licensed attorney in your state. This show is simply for self-help purposes, okay? What would you recommend to a group of frustrated business owners who have applied once, not twice? Oh, let me take a step back. The first scenario with the first round of PPP, several colleagues in Illinois applied for EIDL and PPP the first round. When they applied for EIDL, they actually received Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity responses, IDCEO. So the responses immediately came from IDCEO and not SBA. SBA ultimately responded back and said they're in the queue, right? IDCEO sent a very general, basic standard statement. That's the state's Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Every state has one. What we were trying to understand is what role the state played in determining federal dollars. And that was a concern. How does the state send one general basic message and SBA says you're still in the queue for 2 months and then denies you? Yeah.
Okay, so I really believe that when the PPP loans were released, the applications, I think that the guidance was not that clear. And I think it was ever changing. I'm going to be frank with you. I think it was changing from week to week, which is why I think some people got very frustrated, and why I believe it was difficult for some people to actually follow exactly what they were requesting because there were some changes in it. So this is what I would suggest. There's several things I would suggest. The first things, I'm sure, Justina, you probably talked about this on your show because it sounds like you've been doing a series of shows around this.
Yes.
Is that people really need to consult their local community development financial institution, what they call CDFI. Really, really important. And because what these institutions do, and they're generally in every city, and actually afterwards, I can send you a link. So if you want to ever post it or whatever, you can, where people can find their local CDFIs in their states and their cities. Okay. These are institutions that are specifically geared towards those who may have some challenges getting kind of traditional loans. Because we knew what happened in that first line of PPP and that money being exhausted, and we're looking at historically underserved and historically oppressed communities not receiving that money, that second round of money that came out, 60 billion of those, what I think it was like $310 billion was supposed to be earmarked for historically oppressed and underserved communities. And there were certain institutions like these CDFIs who can be more flexible, right? And the things that they may utilize as evidence to qualify for the PPP loan. They could be of big help for you. That's number one. I need to say that. I also want to say that several states and several cities, right? Your state and your local state and local institutions were giving out grants, really, pretty much to businesses that needed to stay afloat. And so I would really, really ask that people Google local state and local grants for like COVID-19 relief for businesses, for small businesses. There are monies that are out there, right? So they might receive $10,000. That might be a big help to some people who need some money. The other thing that I would do, and this is really important for the frustrated business owner. There are resources out there that can educate about a number of resources that are out there to support you. So, for example, the SBA has a partnership with what they call Entourage Strong. Entourage Strong is an organization that helps small business owners kind of scale and move to the next level. And so one of the things, I have been in 2 programs of theirs. And more recently, I was in a week-long program where we met for an hour, and I was one of the participants in their first cohort, where they were really offering literally day-to-day advice on what was needed to answer any questions we may have to apply for the PPP loan. At the time when I was in that first cohort, I had already submitted an application, but there were several, and I was waiting to hear back. So I told you it took me like 2 weeks, and we started the following week. There were several businesses, small businesses, that were in that cohort. Those CEOs had not applied yet and was thinking about applying, and they were giving us step-by-step guidance on what was needed. So I found that resource to be invaluable. Right? So you want to look at some of these resources out here that can support you, because they do exist. So we have things like an Entourage Strong. We have CDFIs. There are certain organizations like Inc.com that every Friday they do a town hall on issues related to the CARES Act, right? PPP, EIDL. Recently, even the parameters for those who received the PPP, recently, as of, I want to say it was like May 12th or May 15th, the SBA submitted their guidelines for how to get the loans forgiven, because there's a particular formula with that. And I don't know if you want me to go into that, so I'll leave that alone for right now. But what I want to say is there are resources out there. I would really look at Entourage Strong. They were very, very helpful to me. And I think that they are also people who are really looking at supporting small businesses. And the resources and the information that they give us, or that they gave us, was invaluable, really. And it helped all of us stay up to date, point by point, on what the changes were and what was going on with the PPP loan. That's number one. Number two, that Inc. I see that you put in at Inc.com. Every Friday at noon Eastern time, they have a town hall where they address a number of questions. And what they usually do is bring in, I want to say he may be the vice president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and they bring on other business leaders, and they talk about some changes that have come, that have occurred over the week, and then they answer questions that are popular in the chat. Very valuable as well. Please, 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 please check your local CDFIs. And again, Justina, when we finish this, I will send to you that CDFI locator link. You may want to post it. People can click into that and they can find their local CDFI, which would be a very, very, very valuable resource.
Can you repeat one more time what CDFI means?
Community Development Financial Institution. They also want to look at their small business development centers, right?
Yes.
So if you go on your SBA websites, they'll have a listing of your small business development centers in your state. And I really want to urge people, because I know people are frustrated, but we are people that are used to pushing through, right? Mm-hmm. Despite the frustration, right? And so what I really want to really implore to people, don't give up. There are resources out there that I think could be very helpful and help people move forward in being successful in getting the PPP loan. I also want to say this, because I have to really underscore this. It is really important to keep certain books. Mm-hmm. You got to keep them, right? Whether you are a solo practitioner, a small proprietorship, a small business, a 1099, a small corporation. really keeping your records on your taxes, your payment of your employees, your annual and quarterly, what they call FUTA and SUTA, federal unemployment tax, state unemployment tax. It's really, really important. You need to have online platforms or, desktop platforms that help you with your bookkeeping, right? Whether that's QuickBooks, whether that's Quicken. It's really important to get on top of these things, because one of the things that we do as business owners, we're into the business, right? We're not accountants. We're into the business. We want to serve. We want to do whatever it is our business charges us to do. That's what we're focused on. But it's really, really important to keep those records. And I remember when we went through that Entourage Strong program, one of the gentlemen that came to speak to us was a very successful business owner. And what he said was the people who were keeping the traditional kind of books, they were paying their payroll taxes, they were employing people, everybody 1099. They were maintaining certain records, with their mortgage or their rent and their utilities, their healthcare insurance, and they could pull that. He said those were the people that got the PPP. Now, I do think that there were some other things that were going on, but some of the things that you're sharing with me are very disturbing, and I had not heard that. So there's something else in the mix here, right? And what that fully is, I can't speak to. But if I could, just from that very nut and bolt kind of practical space, I think that those are very important things. Where to access monies, and also being connected to small business spaces.
It's extremely important for small businesses to know where to access money. And again, it's unfortunate. We try not to just blame, play the blame game and point fingers. So instead of doing that, our first call was with a United States congressman in the 7th Congressional District, Congressman Davis. And while we had Congressman Davis on the call, we had a bank president on the call from Simmons Bank, so that we were clear on what the process should be, what Congress intended. We understood the intent of Congress based on their response to the SBA and the U.S. Department of Treasury. We understood the sense of the Senate based on their response and the specific language in the CARES Act. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the SBA and the U.S. Department of Treasury have not executed the CARES Act the way that Congress and the Senate intended. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Okoye.
Yes, I'm ready.
Thank you, sir. How are you today?
I'm fine.
Thank you for making time. Dr. Okoye, please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Dr. Matthias Okoye, MD, JD. I directed the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences in Lincoln, Nebraska. We are an educational and research and scientific institution, but we do forensic medical legal death investigation and perform forensic autopsies for 40 counties in Nebraska. Nebraska has 99 counties. Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences is a nonprofit organization. We organized in 2002 and went into business in 2003, April 1. So we have been about 16, 17 years in practice. We applied for PPP, like the previous speaker stated. If you have good bookkeeping and you pay your 941s on quarterly basis, and you keep a good payroll, you will never make mistake. And it's always good to have a good relationship with your bank. You don't have to be a billionaire or a millionaire, but good relationship is very important, so that when this type of thing comes up, they will help you. We have all our records since 2003. The business manager takes care of our bookkeeping. He takes care of our payroll. And we use a national payroll called ADP. ADP is located in Pennsylvania. So they do our payroll, call the checks, everything on bi-weekly basis. So we have everything up to snuff. Our lease payments are all kept by our business manager. And he has this in, he has the ledger spreadsheet, everything, the payrolls, the copies of checks given to employees are all kept. The 941s are done, our 990s we've been filing are all on record. Even if we don't have it, they are online. If you go to, if you check our name on the web, and you can print out our 990s. Everything, W4s and W9s, and all receipts we get, lease payments, utility. They wanted utility payments. They wanted lease payments. We even submitted to them all health insurance and dental insurance we have on employees. We also submitted to them our workman's comp, with travelers insurance. Everything was submitted. And the filling of the form, just 2 pages actually. And then you go to initial, about number 5 and number 6, you go to initial. And then on top, you multiply the monthly payroll amount by 2.5.
Yes.
It took us just 2 weeks. In fact, I walked into the bank, one of the branches, and the manager said, "Oh, Dr. O, are you guys not applying for PPP?" I said, "What is PPP?" I was getting ready to run out of time to go and do autopsies. And she told me that. I said, "Could you send me by email what you are talking about?" And she immediately called the senior vice president, who gave me a call while I was driving and sent me the forms and everything. And I forwarded it to the business manager, and everything. By next 2 weeks, we got it paid into our account.
Awesome. That's a blessing. And Attorney Franklin echoed the same thing, that she had received notifications from several sources within her network. And, that was the one thing. Favor is awesome. Favor is a beautiful, blessed thing. It's a blessing when you're favored. When you are misinformed and uninformed, then you miss out. And I believe,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Yeah, even people who are sole proprietors qualify.
Yes. Yes.
Sole proprietors qualify. You just have to keep good relationship with your bank. Even if it's a credit union, it's good.
Yes.
Good relationship is important.
So, Dr. Okoye, I just wanted to quickly touch on the question about the EI, and I'll read this specifically from one of the financial institutions that put out a Q&A fact sheet. And within that Q&A fact sheet, it says, Can I get more than one PPP loan? And the answer, each taxpayer identification number is only eligible for one PPP loan. There is no limit to the number of lenders you can apply with, but you can only receive one PPP loan. What if I have multiple?
Yes. For one business?
Yes.
Some people have multiple businesses and different employees for each business.
Very true. So in the case of and as Attorney Franklin had pointed out, with the COVID-19 emergency funding right now for small businesses that serve the community who have not qualified. So you have a lot of social service organizations in the community who have been barely scraping by to begin with, covering a lot of cost out of pocket, but then to lose the little bit that they did have and in turn not qualify because they don't have the capacity to keep up with bookkeeping. Because we cannot just assume that everyone has the capacity to keep up with bookkeeping, okay? But they're still operating. They've been operating. They've been functioning. They've managed all these years to still get by and still serve the community. In a situation where the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences, and that's not the only school that you have. I understand that you have a second school in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, that's it's an affiliate. Albany State University is affiliated with us.
Wonderful. Well, considering the fact that the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences has already received PPP funding and is still doing the extremely important work that needs to be done in Nebraska, in the county that I'm from, Cook County, nationwide, Cook County is second for the highest, to my understanding, in deaths and cases that diagnosis of COVID-19. The Austin community, where I grew up at, has an extremely high amount of deaths throughout the city compared to other areas in the sections in the city of Chicago. Not only are they being impacted by COVID-19, the Austin community makes up 1/3 of the Illinois Department of Corrections, where a lot of people have started to die in jail and in the Cook County jail, where they began to protest to have people released. So this touches very close to home. And when I talk about favor, it doesn't mean that because I'm favored and blessed, I should leave my peers behind. We have to pay it forward. So because we know better, we do better. In a case where the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences could expand and repurpose their business to meet the needs of Cook County, of the city of Chicago, of the Austin community on the west side of Chicago, of the Englewood residents, for contact tracing, for COVID-19 testing. Unfortunately, the Nebraska Institute of Forensic Sciences does not qualify because they've already received PPP funding.
Yes, but it does not prevent us from doing charitable work. If we have businesses that could give us money, we could do those testing. We could even train young students, to give them special training and help them, those who are going to, professional schools, like law school, like medical school. We could help them prepare, for their MCAT and LSAT, and give them, special training. Nothing prevents us from doing that by using donations from philanthropies and foundations. Nothing prevents us from doing that.
Justina, can I jump in here a little bit?
Yes.
Because I mean, I didn't want to interrupt Dr. Okoye, because I had a concern about something that you raised, and I want to comment on some things that Dr. Okoye said. The first piece was what you raised was really important, and I wanted to raise it, is that everybody doesn't operate in that traditional fashion. It's true, right? There are people who have been maintaining businesses for a period of time, never having, like you said, what you said, it's something to be blessed and favored, right? There are people who've been operating. You're saying people getting money through Cash App. You name some other platforms like PayPal. I mean, you mentioned all these different things, which are really important, and recognizing we all are not going to function in the same way. Like Dr. Okoye, I do have, a separate payroll company that I do pay monthly, right, to do payroll. And it's helpful because I can get those reports. Dr. Okoye mentioned it. I can get them at my fingertips. But I do recognize that everyone doesn't do that. Like, I know that there's a business owner listening in here right now, because I'm looking at the live chat, and her accountant does the payroll. She does things, with her accountant, not in a payroll company. So I recognize that people do things a different way. And I'm not saying that people can't do things a different way, right? Because I think it's really important. And I talked about earlier of many of us being first generation entrepreneurs. I think it's really important for those of us who have certain information, who've gained certain knowledge, just because we may be connected into a resource and maybe getting information, like I said, with Interrupt Strong, right? Or the Inc. platforms, that we begin to plug in and meeting people where they are, giving people information that will help them, empower them, right? To be able to receive this PPP funding, and to do that by saying, okay, this is how you need to have this set up. I think this is really important, and I really want to drive that home. And I'm going to keep talking about being first generation business owner, and many of us, and again, Decals people are really, really that, right? We have this history in this country where this is something that we have evolved to. It hasn't always been there for us. Now, we know about Black Wall Street. We understand that. But now there are larger numbers of us that are doing that, right? And so having that information, and I want to say that I personally would want to help with something like that, that people who are vulnerable, vulnerable communities, particularly those who are Black people, particularly those who are Decals, or who you would call DAS or ADS, particularly because we have a certain history in this country, I would open myself up to assisting people in how they need to set things up in order to receive these PPP loans. That's number one. Number two, Dr. Okoye talked about being a nonprofit. You raised a good point. Why can't you expand those businesses to serve the most hardest hit communities that are Decals communities, specifically in urban areas? And you use Chicago as an example, and you named certain counties within Chicago. I would add to you, Dr. Okoye, you may not even need to do it as a nonprofit. Why not start another business that specifically is focusing on that? And I say that in the sense that there are a number of businesses who are birthing out of this COVID-19 crisis, and they are gearing their businesses towards doing first responder things, or towards, formulating masks. People who've never done these things before, or, the PPE gear. They are just formulating these businesses because they're seeing the need. I can see that, Dr. Okoye, you can do the nonprofit, but I know that it's almost even tight in getting some of the monies. Why not start another business and then apply for PPP again, saying that I'm focusing on doing testing in the most vulnerable areas in the country?
The dates that the business was operating, it had to have been in operation by February 15th of 2020.
And you're right, but I will say this. There are, and my understanding is, there are different things that may be coming down the pike down the line.
Yes, you are correct.
Right? And so we're not past this pandemic. And I would think that somebody like Dr. Okoye, depending on what the guidance is, could be particularly positioned to be able to get some other additional assistance to help those communities that are the most vulnerable, which are Black decals people in urban areas. So I really want to put that out. I want us to start kind of being flexible in our thinking. And there are enough of us who have received these loans, I believe, who are willing to give back and help those who really are struggling. They don't know what to do with this. Because what you said, Justina, was very true. They just don't have the information. Some of them, they don't have the information, and those guys
and also
you indicated that seem to be, inconsistent. That's a problem, and it needs to be handled. Period.
Yes, and there is nothing like training our younger generation to understand some of these things, because COVID-19 is going to be with us for a long time.
Yes, it is.
There will be situations like this. This is just the beginning. God is opening the doors for us. God is actually trying to help us to equalize these inequities between our folks and the white folks. God is opening the doors for us to equalize. This is a great education. It's a great education. And today, when I was driving, I drive normally 120 miles to go and do my cases, because my mortuary is about 2.5 hours from Lincoln. And when I'm driving, that's actually when I'm thinking of things that are very important. I was thinking today that I don't really need a PPP to be able to do certain things in Chicago. I got an opportunity to leave a legacy for the future generation. In this country, we are only 14 forensic pathologists in United States that are also lawyers. 14 forensic pathologists in United States that are also lawyers. In the whole world universe, there are only 36 forensic pathologists who are lawyers. All the forensic pathologists have trained since 1980-81. After training in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins and the Office of the Medical Examiner, have been 90% Caucasians. I've only trained and mentored 3 that are Black. I've only mentored 2 Chinese. I've not had opportunity to mentor a Hispanic. But majority of people I've trained and mentored have been actually Caucasians. And I've tried to do this in multiple ways. I have not been successful. When I was in DC, Washington, DC, under my Mayor Marion Berry, late Mayor Marion Berry, as the chief medical examiner for the district, I tried to train, to co-opt residents and medical students from Howard University. They didn't have the interest. It was mostly George Washington U residents in pathology and medical students, and Georgetown that were very interested. I can't turn them down. I can't turn them away. I continued training. I continued teaching. In fact, Dr. Fossey, you see on the TV every day, was one of my consultants from the NIH. We did a research on HIV.
Thank you,
with
Dr.
with
Okoye.
the Walter Reed Army Medical Center and the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. So this is a great opportunity to be able to get younger generation of Black kids and give them this opportunity. So I'm determined before I go to see St. Peter in heaven to be able to do this, and I must do it.
Amen. Dr. Okoye, we have attorney William Moore on the line right now. Attorney Moore. Hi, Attorney Moore.
Can you hear me?
We can. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm doing fine. How are you?
We are great. Thank you so much. We have attorney Stephanie Franklin on the line out of Baltimore and Dr. Matthias Okoye out of Nebraska. Lincoln. Attorney Moore?
Yes, that's great.
Well,
It's good
thank
to
you.
meet you. I've heard so much about you, Attorney Franklin. Justina talks so highly of you, so it's nice
Thank
to finally meet you. I hope you can't hear all the background noise. I'm driving right now, so that's why I tried to kind of take all of the extra noise out or
Oh, no
extra
worries.
scene out. So that's why
You sound
yeah.
clear. Thank you. It's nice to meet you, Attorney Moore.
Yes, and it's good to connect with you again, Dr. Okoye. And I think it's just a great thing to be able to bring what you do to Chicago and wherever else you're going to take it. I think it's a great thing to give these opportunities to young people that want to get in this field. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Attorney Moore.
So, Attorney Moore, we were just briefly touching on the fact that businesses do not qualify, who have already received PPP do not qualify because they have only one EIN number. And earlier in the conversation, Attorney Franklin mentioned the same thing you mentioned. Hey, we need to Google and go after the funding. She hit it right on the head, the emergency COVID-19 funding. There is so much money out there. And then she went through a list of resources that we're going to recap at the end of the call.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I know that you had given some very helpful information regarding grants.gov and a couple of other sources of grant funding for small businesses that are seeking emergency COVID-19 funding. So there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Short of, the PPE is just one source. And it's interesting how when you look at grants.gov and you see how they are giving money to other nations, but they're also making it available to the United States as well. It's just a matter of mining and looking at that site to find out what's available. Yeah.
Awesome. We have Bruce Carter tuning in regarding the PPP. He is one of the leaders and founder of the CSB Coalition Community for Small Businesses, csbcoalition.com. Can you go ahead and give us an overview, Bruce Carter?
Of the coalition, or what?
The coalition and what the requests are from the. So Bruce Carter read the 880-page CARES Act, and one of the concerns regarding you could go ahead and explain it.
All right.
The request.
Well, I read the law, but the concern is that SBA has not followed the law, and I kind of heard about all the opportunities, but are they real opportunities? I've had the privilege. I'm in Memphis now, to travel this country the last 2 weeks, and I'm getting all kinds of denial letters for character issues, credit when people didn't even really apply for the loan, the EIDL grants that were never funded, and then in the way they were funded. So I'm not in any way a believer that SBA has let's say acted in good faith when it came to certain or specific groups. And it's for that reason that we are preparing to occupy them and also file a lawsuit on behalf of business owners across the country who've just been ignored.
What are they talking about credits?
I mean, do you have that's something you got to ask SBA. I know that there are people that have been successful to get PPP loans. There are others that have been successful at getting the EIDL. But at some point, being a black man in America, the law has never been on my side the way I see it. I'm from Dallas. So when the law is written and the law puts in provisions, not necessarily for me as an individual, but for the people that I desire to see prosper, and that law is manipulated, then that's the issue. And I think the greater issue that I'm seeing, many people who've gotten funding, they think that, oh, you got to have this paperwork, you got to do this. That sounds great, but the law was written, understand that there is a demographic that do own businesses who don't have certain paperwork. So the law was very explicit in the fact that there need to be special guidelines for those individuals in certain markets, and that just has not happened from SBA.
And the majority of minority businesses are sole proprietor. You know that. Majority of minority businesses are sole proprietor, but sole proprietors qualify.
But I'm trying to put that in context, Dr. Okoye.
There is no need for any financial institution to be looking at credit score of applicants, because what you require is to show the payroll, 2 months of payroll multiplied by 2.5, show the rent you pay for the lease, that is the lease you pay, show if you have employees, you show the W-4 they completed, and also the copies of check if they need them, utilities, and other expenses you make on monthly basis.
Yes, Dr. Okoye, and that we're all clear on what the requirements should be. The concern now is that business owners have received denials and rejections due to quote unquote their character and their credit. And again, the question that I posed earlier was, in a situation where small business owners have followed the guidelines, they followed the steps, and yet they're still being denied, aside from the frustration and aside from the misinformation, what Attorney Franklin had mentioned was that she would even offer some guidance to business owners to obtain a favorable, she can't make any guarantees, but as an attorney, as a professional, as a person who has already gone through this process, she could in turn offer some guidance to small business owners. And one of the things Attorney Franklin mentioned earlier was that we should remain positive through the process because there are other opportunities coming through the pipeline right now.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a part of that.
This is a question of, like Bruce Carter said, I don't know what Attorney Franklin thinks, but this type of matter should be litigated. Because if a financial institution is sued for denying a few customers who have been, banking with them, for a few years, these crucial PPP loans, that's going to get their attention.
Well, here's the issue. I think that I'm not sure who's all on the call, but let's just say that the majority of the individuals that's on the call, let's say they receive money. That's not the concern. So it doesn't matter if 50 trillion come down. If you don't have guidelines that deal with business owners who don't have 940s, 941s, 944s, they're still business owners. They have certificates of occupancy, they have leases, and they pay taxes to some degree. So the law was very specific that there should have been guidelines for those groups. That's who I'm talking about, and that's who I'm fighting for. And I should not have hundreds of calls from black men who did not get money, period. So there is.
Yeah, but you see, Bruce,
money comes back.
Bruce, I know of business owners who are sole proprietors. They submitted their tax return.
Well, not
for the last 3 years.
But Dr. Okoye, some are LLCs, some are corporations. I guess what I'm saying.
How can they be denied?
You're asking me? You're asking me why did black farmers not get loans 50 years ago? So this is just part of what happens, but we're at such a critical point that if we don't do something now, people talk about gentrification as far as residential communities that's transforming to condos. What you're going to have is a gentrification of businesses that are owned by minorities. Now you're going to have communities that are going to be gentrified from the commercial side. And now you're going to take dollars that very seldom repurpose itself in communities, then they're going to be gone. And so if I'm here in Memphis now, meeting with the Black Business Association, 83 cents of every $100 that is spent in black businesses. So you're already at the brink of being in a bad place. And so here again, we have government money that's being allocated, and it is the money that's really flowing now. Many lenders have slowed up from doing any type of major lending out of concern what might happen in the next 90 days. So you cannot have billions of dollars that come out. You cannot have a president saying, I got all this money earmarked for African-American communities, and it's not reaching them. And you can't have banks that use guidelines to discriminate and ask for tax returns, things that are not asked. So yes, we're going to sue the SBA, and we're going to sue banks that knew the law because they was given the law and they was given the sense of the Senate, and they just did not comply. So I don't know what else to say why it's happening. I can't tell you every reason why it's happening, but there are definitely some history lessons that are reoccurring, and we just have to deal with it head on.
So I want to speak, Justina. Mr. Carter, you're right. You're absolutely right. There needs to be a suit filed or something regarding the discrepancy in how people are receiving loans. You can't answer. You're right. You can't answer for that. You can't. The bottom line is that it's happening. And so, hearing things like character and credit scores and things like that are really disturbing. And so there needs to be some action that's taken. We do understand, and I hear you when you say what Congress's intention was, but then the implementation of that became something very different. So I'm just saying to you, I understand what you are saying and what the issue is.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I do want to put out there is one more layer of messy, just a convoluted situation that shouldn't happen right now. In Illinois in particular, you have nearly 100,000 people waiting on the release of their unemployment. So not only do you have small businesses that are not receiving PPP, small businesses this second round that have applied for EIDL, but they're being told that the money is earmarked specifically for agriculture now. When the application does not say, when you apply for the EIDL now, it does not say you are applying for specifically for agriculture purposes. Doesn't say that. Your denial letter says that the money is earmarked for agriculture, okay? In Illinois, unemployment benefits have not been released yet. In addition to the fact that there has been a major data breach of nearly 32,500 claimants that have had their data viewed by one claimant they claim. But the point is, not only are unemployed people not receiving unemployment, the small businesses are not receiving PPP or EIDL. I am extremely concerned that the next wave of foreclosures is going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. We're already dealing with gentrification and displacement in the city of Chicago. We're already dealing with our tax dollars and our TIF money being utilized, hundreds of millions of dollars that should be utilized in low income and disadvantaged communities, where that money is being earmarked and funneled to higher income, more affluent communities, okay? The other ends of the wards. When we talk about the history repeating itself, it just takes me back to the Freedmen's Bureau and the promise for 40 acres and a mule, but they made our people renters. In a city of Chicago where the city had a resident covenant in the north, and it hadn't been lifted until the late 50s, early 60s, where you had the Jewish Contract Buyers League. So when we talk about history and the way that our families have lost businesses, yes, we know about Black Wall Street, but when I go down Madison and Pulaski now, those businesses do not look like the people who live in the community. They live somewhere else. They live in Justice, Illinois, but they come make money in our community. And they receive major, major tax incentives to bring their businesses into our communities. The level of accountability, brothers like Bruce Carter, we have to have that level of accountability to say, we're going forth now. And at this point, enough is enough. We are grateful that businesses have been funded, but for the businesses that haven't been funded based on credit and character and other we had a situation where an attorney, a law firm, received a denial letter, and it was just a one-page standard computer-generated denial letter that did not explain why the business had been denied the PPP. And that particular attorney, a Black man, in some kind of way, we talked about the fact that, unfortunately, when people apply, there is a way to tell what their ethnic background is or what their race is. Can we speak to that? Brother Bruce, are you saying something? You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I mean, we give them our driver license. We provide our social security numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's
so
never
they know immediately the ethnic group.
Yeah. I just, like I said, the frustration is the more people I talk to or the more calls I get is that, and it's just, I'm denying you and I'm not giving you any type of reason why. You know, one gentleman called me today and said he finally called them. He hadn't heard anything. And they said, well, we were going to send you the money, but your bank account was to your personal, it wasn't to your company name. But you never called and told him anything. If you had given him money and the government, and he wasn't supposed to have that money, you would have been calling him, expecting him to pay you that money back. So it's about the intent of the law was to get the money in the hands of business owners as fast as possible. So the law says 3 days, maybe that was over the top, but that was the law. So they never gave the EIDL out in 3 days. But the law said you were supposed to get it within 3 days. That didn't happen. So they definitely broke that law. The 10 days after your PPP has been approved, you're supposed to have that money in your bank account within 10 days. I've had people who got it, and then when the bank didn't do it in 10 days and they complained, the bank just canceled their loan. So there's too much that has happened. I see some new guidelines that someone sent me that came out last week that spoke about wouldn't necessarily be held liable for the loan. They would have to give back the 5% they made if there was an error. But when you strike down in the law, credit, so all these loans had no credit rating. They didn't require credit rating. So that means banks.
No, not at all.
Beg your pardon?
Not at all. It didn't require credit rating.
There was no credit. Now, so when that's stricken down, what you do is you take the EIDL, and it's supposed to be a $10,000 grant. The law calls it a grant. When you talk to SBA, they say we don't do grants. We give you loans. So the EIDL is a loan, and if you get a higher amount, then we'll take back what we gave you. But to not give out the immediate $10,000, even if I'm a sole proprietor, Dr. Carter, one person, $1,000 is not going to help me. I can't pay my rent. I can't do it. But $10,000 could have sustained.
That's why your payroll every month for PPP, payroll every month multiplied by 2.5.
Yes, Dr. Okoye.
There's another PPP. There's another PPP in the pipeline.
Right. So one of the things that the Coalition for Small Businesses, and full disclosure, I am a supporter of the Coalition for Small Businesses, CSB, and I'm a member of the Coalition for Small Businesses. The main goal is to protect historically underserved during the coronavirus pandemic and to provide funds expeditiously to the most vulnerable businesses. The coalition is requesting the immediate issuance of the following guidelines by the U.S. Small Business Administration and the U.S. Department of Treasury. And this letter and request went to them May 7th. Bruce, I believe you submitted a separate letter on behalf of the coalition several weeks prior to May 7th.
Yeah, well, the first letter went out. The funding opened up on April 3rd. The first letter went out April the 6th, based on having conversations with multiple bankers before they ever opened the portal of some of the things that they saw were wrong. And no guidelines had been given at that time for the businesses in underserved and rural markets, according to the law. So that Friday, we made application. That Monday, we wrote SBA's Administrator Jovita Carranza and say, hey, here's some of the issues that's going to happen. No response. On the 9th, we sent out a press release that likened, if we did not do better, that these, the way they were processing loans could be like slavery or mass incarceration, COVID could for African-American communities. Absolutely. And then on the 9th, that was on the 9th, on the 10th, 12 congressmen and senators responded to the press release on the 9th and wrote SBA and the Treasury Department, basically letting them know that they were metering the loans and they were taking actions as it related to the EIDL grants out of the context of what the law was, along with the PPP. So they clearly know what they're doing is an issue. But once again, this is an administration who sets their rules and they don't mind doubling down on their rules. So America is responsible for this, not one president, not one administrator, as time goes on. So the only way that I see you get any type of remedy for these businesses is taking the stance that we're taking now. So
real quick, one of the things that we requested, and this is the letter, one of the letters that went out on May 7th. There are several letters and the press releases. You can go to csbcoalition.com, csbcoalition.com. And there are specific requests that have been made to the U.S. Department of Treasury and the SBA. And just in a quick bullet point synopsis, we have asked the U.S. Small Business Administration and the U.S. Department of Treasury to comply with the PPP and EIDL grants' intended purpose of Congress, to honor the sense of the Senate in H.R. 748, which is the CARES Act, to remove the lender's discretion, ensure loans are guaranteed and funds are dispersed, to honor the applicant's good faith certification in place of IRS Forms 940, 941, 1096, or 1099. If these requests are not heard, coalition partners from across the U.S. will occupy SBA. Beginning June 1st, 2020 in D.C., and they will occupy until these, we won't say demands, these simple and basic requests are heard. The coalition will follow social distancing guidelines in compliance with the Center for Disease Control, and the coalition will distribute masks and gloves at each demonstration. So the CSB coalition is prepared to stand in the gap on behalf of the people who are not in a position right now to speak out for themselves. And Brother Bruce Carter, I understand he's been flooded with calls. Ultimately, we need answers. That's all we're asking for at this point. We're simply asking for answers. And we're simply asking, again, if the SBA and if the bank is not communicating well with the client, then the bank needs to be held accountable. But as I heard earlier, Bruce Carter just mentioned that the new guidelines will not hold banks accountable. And it's, again, it sounds no different than the mortgage foreclosure settlement and HAMP. This is set up the same way. And who ultimately wins in the end? The banks do. So, Dr. Okoye?
I'm here. I'm listening to you.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to be sure you were still with us. And Attorney Moore?
Yes, I'm still here. I just wanted to ask Bruce if these people that are getting denied, are they like pushing back on that? Are they appealing, or
we are doing some reconsideration letters, but once again, here's what I don't know if you've ever read The Miseducated Negro, and if you haven't, maybe you should. Sometimes when you're already at the brink of losing it all, you don't have anything to fight. I mean, you're trying to figure out, how do I continually try to pay a bill? But these are people who have called, we've talked, and they are all over the country. So will they fight back? Some will come to Washington, they'll do their part, but we will together make sure that the reconsideration letters are put forth, because that's just part of the process. You have to make sure you follow everything that they've laid out. So everyone that we get a letter for, we will respond and to ask for clarification and to oppose the action that they took. But also, as I told one gentleman, they're telling you they denied you for a loan. Then you should be asking them, what happened to the $10,000 that I should have got? I haven't gotten a dollar. I haven't heard anything. You put me in a straight loan status, so you skipped a step with me. There are people who have gotten the EIDL, then they've gotten a letter from EIDL SBA saying that they've been approved for an additional amount of money. I've seen that happen several times. But then I also see people who got some of the money initially, but never got that loan approval for an additional amount of money. So it's just like all over the place. And the people that I talk to the most that have gotten denied either for the EIDL loan that they didn't even apply for, or even after they were told they were approved and they made the application, the majority were Black men. So now what that adds up to, I don't know, but we will have some type of sampling could demonstrate that when we go to Washington. And
Attorney
I hope I answered
Moore?
your question.
This is really sad.
Well, we're definitely going forward. And the wonderful thing, if anyone has any questions, please post your messages and your comments, and we'll be sure to ask the attorneys questions on your behalf. Keep in mind, this is not legal advice. If you need any legal advice, please consult an attorney, a licensed attorney in your state. This is self-help information to use at your discretion. Okay, so Attorney Franklin, we can definitely look forward to having some form of network of potential PPP claimants who may need to reach out to you should they have any questions. What would be the best way to reach you?
If they could go to bit.ly/Stephanie Franklin ESQ. And my name is spelled STEPHANIE.
Okay.
ANKLINESQ.
BIT dot, I'm going to type it in the comments.
BIT.L like Lima, yellow, / Stephanie Franklin ESQ.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's nice meeting you, Attorney Franklin.
It's nice to meet you too, Dr. Okoye.
Yeah. Are you located in Chicago or are you in LA?
I'm in Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to be at 111 Penn Street, 111 Penn Street.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's the old city morgue.
Yes. Yes.
I trained under Fisher.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Good memories. Good memories. Baltimore, Maryland.
Wonderful. Okay.
Nice meeting you. Thank you very much. And Attorney William Moore and Mr. Bruce Carter, thank you very much.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
stay in touch and continue talking.
All righty.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. All be safe.
Okay. Have a
Thank
blessed
you.
evening.
So thank you all very much. Justina, a special thank you to you for having me on today. I want to thank Dr. Okoye, Attorney Moore, Mr. Carter. Thank you all very much.
All righty. Good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Justina, thank you very much. You're always a gem. I'd like
Thank
to be like you when I grow up.
Dr. Okoye, you are so wonderful. And you know, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a
God
blessed
bless.
evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining Consumer Legal Hour with the Justice Team. Make sure you tune in next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a blessed evening and be safe.